Welcome to St Ives School of Painting's How-To series. Short lessons taken from our longer online courses, designed to help you build confidence and skills in drawing and painting, one focused exercise at a time.
For today's drawing exercise, we're going to be using oil paper, and this is Georgian oil painting paper, a De La Rowney one, and I've just got an A4 size here today just to work on, and so we're going to, as I say, this is already primed, which is really great, so you haven't got to prime it. Not that for the drawing that we're doing it necessarily you need to work on an oil painting paper. You could work on a different stock, but obviously for our painting it's essential that we use something like this. So I think you'll see the first image that we're going to work from today come up on the screen, and that's going to be the first still life setup that we'll work from, and I'm going to be using these really lovely waxy sort of soluble crayons, and I think you'll have had the link to these. I've got all sorts of colours here, and I put a suggestion of colours on the material list, but you can use whatever you like, and whatever you may have other crayons that you prefer to use than these, but I use these simply because the colours are so rich, and for me, when complementing with oil paint, there's a similarity in depth of hue and intensity, which I really love, and that's why I've always stuck to using these as my kind of drawing medium other than pencil. So this is a simple exercise just to get our hand moving, to get our eye looking at the still life, trying to break down the shapes and the forms in quite a simple way, which we can then refer back to when we're working on a larger painting later down the line. So looking at this still life here, often the still life that I'm working from in the studio, I'll have the still life, but then I'll also have lots of objects that surround it, past paintings, surfaces such as this kind of pink trunk that this jug of tulips is sitting on, and so all of these things allow pops of colour to kind of come into the work, and I'll be looking at the painting as sort of the overall sort of spatial dynamic of the setup in terms of how the still life will sort of form on my paper. So I usually start by looking at the jug and the still life, the sort of blooms or the flowers to begin with, and those quite kind of lovely shapes and curves that they allow. So I'm going to begin with so I've got some of these crayons here. You can use whatever colours you like, and as much as anything, this is about getting a kind of composition going. So I'm going to select some colours to use, and I'm going to begin with looking at the jug there and just creating some I'm trying to use very kind of simple marks when I'm drawing, that not so many jagged lines, trying to get a sense of fluidity. So it's about trying to so I'm going to start with the jug, so just very simple marks here, just to get an idea of shape. And so this was a kind of very like sort of mid sort of green. I've got some like lighter hues I'm going to use. So whatever crayons you've got, as long as you've got some kind of a loose variety of tones, that's great. Or you could just decide to use one colour for this and just focus on the shapes and the forms. So this sort of exercise is about just sort of getting those ideas down on paper. So we've got these really sweeping lines that are coming in from the stems of the tulips. I particularly love working with tulips. I just think the way that they bend and form and their kind of identity that turns as they sort of sit in the jug are really lovely. So some of these marks here forming like this. So this is quite a loose process. I'm just going to take quite a rich red here as my tone to use for the tulips, and I'm just creating a very simple marks here, just to create quite sort of an abstracted view of this sort of still life. I don't know if you can see that's too bright, but I don't know if you see the simple shapes there. And then I'm going to bring in perhaps some of these very loose leaf-like marks that just come in around the tulips, like so. And beginning to build up a sort of composition in the centre of the paper here. I always like to put some kind of horizon line in, or sort of give a sense of grounding to the still life. So just a loose mark there, and a sort of sense of the shadow coming across the paper. Quite often in the studio, as I say, there are objects that are surrounding me while I'm working, so there might be an edge to another painting or an edge to a sort of table or something, and they allow, so for me there might be a sort of edge of a painting here that I'm just going to bring in a vertical line, add that into the painting here. And these could all then kind of form as components in a more final painting, sort of breaking up the background of the still life and the foreground with the shadow, and how other colours will sort of layer around it. So these are a loose way of getting a composition down on paper. And perhaps then when looking more into the kind of jug, you might see the sort of sense of shadow here with the edge of the jug adding a little bit of colour. Perhaps another tone. In as well. And this is, I'm going to be sort of leaving the background quite, it's going to be quite sparse for now, but I'm putting in sort of marks and lines that just feel like they work with the overall sort of flow of the piece. And I think it's about allowing your hand to kind of just do what feels natural and not being too conscious of you've got the still life as a subject, and using that as a basis, but then whilst you're working feeling like, oh no, this mark really does sit well here with this sort of structure of say the flowers or the leaves. And I think this allows balance, and I think balance is really important in any kind of sketch or drawing or painting you're working in, that you can have a really fabulous part of the painting, but if that's not balanced in a correct way, or there's not enough sort of colour in another section of the work, that can kind of throw off another part. So it's in kind of the same way as when we were looking at Patrick Heron's work about the way that colour for him, certain colours will throw off other colours, and it's quite important to get that kind of balance of those hues, and it's the same when you talk about shapes and forms. So I've got another green here that I might bring into the leaves just a little bit, allowing some of those shapes to be stronger. But for me, something like this is just a drawing that can be very that used as a sort of starting point then for a painting.
Want more tips, tricks and inspiration? Each of the short lessons are taken from one of our full courses in our extensive online library. We have over 100 courses available for you to watch on demand. Visit our website to find out more, and hit subscribe for more creative inspiration.